All right, so we've just come out of a closed meeting session, and there's a bit of information that we can relay to those tuning in. Well, firstly, I need someone to move that we come out of the closed meeting. I move that we come out of the closed meeting session. Seconded by Councillor Simon. All those in favor, thank you. There are directives that have been given, but there's still a resolution to be revisited. So after this meeting, we'll enter into another closed meeting. So let's continue on with the regular meeting of Town Council for now. So I believe, Mr. Mayor, there are also some deferred items that we will be dealing with tonight at the regular meeting. Yes, that's right. Just like to. There are some. For those that have the eScribe documents in front of you, item 5 has a second resolution that needs to be dealt with tonight. Just read it, Marie. All right, no problem. Be it resolved that Council accepts a settlement that was reached in the action commenced in the Ontario Superior Court of Justice by Richard B. and Shan Shepherdson against Norma Excavation Inc., the Corporation of the Clarence and Rockland, and the Corporation of the United Counties of Prescott and Russell, and be it also resolved that the clerk be authorized to sign a mutual full and final release as presented. So, moved by Councillor Simon, seconded by Councillor Simoneau. All those in favor then? Thank you. Let's continue on, shall we? All right then. Are there any announcements? Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor. Well, there's the provincial MPPs on 16th of June, sponsored by Trillium, and the Dale Duga, who's Minister of Transportation, will be the guest speaker. He's still Minister of Transportation? Yes, he is. And on the 15th of June, we are meeting with the Ottawa Caucus members. And we'll be dealing with Highway 174, along with all 4 regional ministers. Again, we're trying to settle this document. Fine. I believe we're talking about $1 billion more worth of expenditures. Anyways, we're getting closer to a resolution. Yes, I believe we're meeting with Mr. Drouin on Friday, and as soon as he has further news, he'll let us know what the status is. I can tell you that Mr. Drouin is working very hard to get us what we need. Thank you. Mrs. Simon, there's a community picnic that was canceled this coming Sunday because of rain. That was last week, should I say, so it's going to be deferred back to next Sunday. So the agreement also with the garage that we had entered into has been voided. So you can't park your your yellow car in that garage anymore. That's right. Any other announcements? That's fine. Let's go on now to the infrastructure resolution. Or should I say consent items? Or question. No consent items. Question. We're on to question period. On to the question period. If you have questions, step ahead and ask them. If you have any questions, state your name and address. So please state your name and address. Step up to the mic. Thank you. Good evening. Good evening, sir. My name is Pierre Lamontagne. I own the Aqualife store. My question is as follows. I'm paying water rates. If you're not familiar with my store, some of you are. And the gentleman is right beside the Remax and the Rosaline stores. This store has been going strong since 1996. I took possession of the business since 2005. I've owned it for the past 10 years. Now, given the water and the sewer rates, you see, I'm making use of the water, but I'm arguing with regards to the rates that I'm paying for sewer. services. I'm selling distilled water. Distilled water goes through a huge piece of machinery that boils the water. The water comes out as steam, and steam then is transferred to water. And my clients drink this water. All you have is a bathroom in there and a wash basin. That's it. Is there a means to look into that? Because the gentleman states, and Mr. Key, well, Mr. Mayor, there really isn't a precedent. The municipality should not enter into a precedent because otherwise we'd be opening floodgates to try to determine what goes into the sewer system as opposed to what does not go into the sewer system. So I don't believe that there's any municipality that provides any rebate or subsidy for sewer rates. Not that I'm aware of. Councillor Zant? Well, we've spoken a couple of times. We've addressed that matter. I understand that his business is into the selling of purified water, and I believe that you told me that your water rate uh, invoice, well, my invoice was pegged at $3,795 every 3 months. Now, my sewer rate's $1,764.08. That's for sewer rates. Now, I'm not here saying to council that I don't want to pay this. If you can at least lower my sewer invoice by about 75%, I'd be happy and I'd be able to live with that. I could raise my prices, but I can't do so because I have to remain competitive with everyone. Well, you see, I wanted to bring this to council's attention. This gentleman sells water, and this water then is introduced into people's individual septic tank systems. That has nothing to do with the sewer rates. I understand the whole precedent thing, but I believe that with $1,700 worth of sewer rates, Mr. Mayor, the gentleman could meet with us and give us further details and take a look into the possibility of some programs and into some programs that might be in place or implemented by other municipalities to alleviate sewer tax rates or to decrease those rates. Well, Mr. Mayor, this request was made a few years ago. Now, the answer given at that time was those people that make use of this water, that makes use of this water to fill their pools or to use water to for gardening, then they this is not put back into the sewer system. But he's paying $1,700. You know, some folks will pay $45 for sewer rates, but he's paying $1,700. There's quite a discrepancy. Councillor Leval, I think we have to be cautious. I sympathize with you, sir, but we have to be cautious. If there's a percentage of snowbirds that don't make use of their residences for a 6 month period, are they going to come up to ask for a reduction of their sewer rates? Look, I sympathize with you, sir. I sympathize, but we have to be wary as to how we'll deal with this matter. Mr. Kehoe will determine whether or not there is an existing program that the province might invoke to alleviate his problem or to alleviate his tax burden. Well, let's obtain further information, and from then on, we can, once we have the information on hand, we'll make a decision. If I understand correctly, there's a percentage that he's asking in keeping with the volume of water that he's selling. There must be businesses that are caught up in the same situation as this gentleman, either in Ottawa or elsewhere, that does exactly what this gentleman does. So we might visit those municipalities and determine whether or not they've come up with a solution. His business is to sell water. There are no other businesses akin to his. Restaurants don't function on the same principle. Bars, residences don't function on this principle. He sells water, and I believe that we have to take a look at this situation. Give us your address and your phone number that you can be reached at 613-446-1233. Mr. Keogh will obtain the necessary information and forward an answer to you. If you're not happy with the answer forwarded to you, come back to council and we'll see what we can do. That's all I can tell you as far as this goes tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Other questions? Well, why not? Watch out, guys. Let's get ready. Step up to the mic, man. My God, what a welcome I'm having tonight. I'm I'm a regular here at town council meetings. All right. I only have the right to ask one question. No, no. Well, let's start off. I'm going to tackle the hardest question to be dealt with first. You've all received two emails that I've sent. I felt anxious this weekend. Well, I felt productive this weekend. I sent you reading material. Now, do you have any provisions in the Clarence Rockland budget, an envelope entitled embellishment? Tom, do you have something to that effect? Well, I've seen something that's really going to embellish Bourget, really. A water park that's going to come out of development fees. Well, right, that's great. Well, yes, we've obtained money. Listen to me. Listen to what I'm saying, Mr. Mayor. A water park. Well, Mr. Mayor, I followed up on Mr. Leroux's email and I forwarded it to Mr. Kehoe. So I forwarded it to Mr. Kehoe. Ross, maybe you can reiterate what you answered me. Well, do you have an embellishment envelope? Do you have a specific line item for that? Well, we don't, ma'am. That's the short answer. If town council wishes to have a specific line item, we'll have to look into it for the 2017 budget, but there's nothing specific directly related to embellishment. If you read my email, there are many small projects that are ongoing. I'm not talking about a water park here. So, to recap this argument, you're actually answering your own question. We'd like to embellish all around our area. We have some difficulties with the way our area looks. I'll be tackling a second question later on, but we have a mural, an exceptional mural that's being painted on the Mike Dean storefront or store side, and we'll obtain grants for that as well as Heritage Canada. We're obtaining grants and Trillium also, if I'm not mistaken. Trillium, Mrs. Chartrand, we were told that money is available from Trillium, and Mr. Lalonde can certainly embellish this answer, but we have to uh, ally ourselves with a registered cooperative like the community center, for example, is a registered entity, and Mrs. Carole Levagne at the United Counties of Prescott Russell can help you to obtain further grants from Trillium. Well, fine, but my question remains. There's no specific line item in your budget for 2016 for embellishment. As you know, our villages need a bit of help to embellish. Our villages need help to embellish their surroundings. We're not asking for a huge amount of money, but we need some money to embellish our village surroundings. But let me repeat to you, we've come up with $50,000 to set up a water park. Yes, but at this point in time, the water park is not all that busy. I understand. But that's the future of the municipality, that water park. There are some things that we're doing too. Well, if we take a look at the future, we have to be proud of our villages. And to be proud of our individual villages, we have to embellish our villages, you see. This is a pride inherent to all of ourselves, a sign of, it makes us feel an integral part of our community. Can we ask you to seriously think when you're preparing the next budget for 2017 to come up with a line item? I'm calling this a line item or a budgetary envelope. I'm sorry if I'm making use of the the wrong term, but it's nice to have flower pots, but this is not paid by the Bourget. Saint Pascal is not paying for those flower pots that are hanging all around. We are. I know there are many things that are going through my mind here that won't cost a lot to embellish our villages. So I'd like to ask you to put a little bit of money aside in 2017 to embellish our villages because you'll be getting similar requests, not just from myself or from others. Next question. You've received my email with regards to the train station in Bourget. Now, I don't know what you think of this or what you want to do with the train station. I'm just trying to come up with options or to come up with options for us that are viable, just in case Via Rail comes back with no possibility of resolving the situation. Well, as things stand right now, I've entered into conversations with the United Counties of Prescott Russell that seek to enter into a 25-year agreement with VIA because they're trying to determine whether or not we're going to keep this railroad station or we're going to spend money to embellish this area, and then we'll be told 2 or 3 years down the road that we're not the owner of the property anymore. Lanark has entered into a similar agreement. Well, is this going to occur in the next year, in the coming months? I can't tell you really. How quickly is VIA going to react to this situation? I do not know. I can't answer you as to that. We would certainly be very pleased if the train station remained where it is. That would be the ideal situation, but I've taken a look at other possibilities. When reality struck me straight in the face, if VIA says no, that might be another option, might be to look at some of the trails around or some of the solutions. Do you sleep at night, ma'am? Don't worry, I sleep sound. I thought you stood up all night long thinking about that. No, no, Mr. Mayor. All right, ma'am. Of course, I just don't want us to miss out on the opportunity to leave this matter festering without doing anything. The train station will deteriorate and might be prey to some vandalism if we don't do anything. I raise this issue each and every time that I attend United Counties meetings. I understand. I understand. Now, in any event, I just like you to be aware of the fact that I'm always uh, involved in this project, and I'm going to promote it to actively until the time I draw my last breath. I have no doubt. Fine. So I'll come and knock at your door again to ask for embellishment money in the coming years. So please make sure that you have a line item or try to deal with this at your next round of budgetary talks. Let's go on now. Let's go on now to the next item. Thank you, ma'am, to Ken's consent items. Are there some items that you'd like to withdraw from the list of consent items? 10.A, 10.2A and B, and 10.3 completely. Mrs. Simard, will be it resolved that the following items identified under consent items that are on the agenda be adopted. 10.1, the adoption of the minutes of the following meetings. Regular meeting of May the 16th, 2016, and receipt of the minutes of the following meetings. A, Public Library Board of November 17th, 2015. B, Public Library Board of December the 8th, 2015. C, Public Library Board of February 9th, 2016. D, Public Library Board of March 22nd, 2016. And E, Committee of Adjustment of April the 26th, 2016. F, Heritage Advisory Committee of January the 12th, 2016. G, Heritage Advisory Committee of February the 19th, 2016. H, Public Transit Advisory Committee of March 31st, 2016. 10.4, Resolution for the nomination of volunteer firefighters. Seconded by Councillor Zant. All those in favor to adopt those consent items? Thank you. Let's read 10.3 A and B now. The following recommendations, yes, from Committee of the Whole. A, resolution to mandate the Infrastructure and Planning Department to proceed with a call for tender for the purchase of a grader. Do you want me to read B also? Yes. Resolution to approve the procedure CW-2016-01 to address requests from a community or individual. We have to adopt separately, right, Maurice? We need to do that. Yes, you need to come up with separate resolutions for each item. Let's start the first one. Resolution to mandate the Infrastructure and Planning Department to proceed with the call for tender for the purchase of a grader. Let's deal with this one. Any questions? Or seconded by seconded by Councillor Simoneau. Councillor Lalonde. Well, Mr. Mayor, I do have a few questions with regard to this particular resolution. On many occasions, I had occasion to state that we should resort to the Crown Asset Corporation to dispose of Crown assets. You know, very often the equipment that it has up for sale is close to brand new. If I remember, and in the 1980s or 90s, you know, we had occasion to purchase a vehicle for about $15,000 that was close to brand new. Even the tires were close to brand new. There are so many figures also involved in this particular resolution that I have difficulty to make ends meet or to make heads or tails of this. Heads or tail. I'm entirely in agreement with you, Ms. Councillor Lalonde. Firstly, I have not had occasion to attend the last two meetings, and the last meeting at which that particular item was discussed, I took a look at what was being discussed on TV, and I wondered, am I taking a look at a magic show or what here? I'm saying to myself, it can't be. This can't be. They're able to manipulate figures, and they're able to manipulate figures to the extent that they convey the message that they wish people to hear in a certain way, you know, in a certain way. If you take a look at the Excel spreadsheet, we're talking about 4 pages worth of data, and I'm in agreement with Mr. Lalonde, Councillor Lalonde on that. Secondly, I went through the numbers, and I'd like to thank you to have given me the opportunity to dust off my financial books. I haven't reviewed them since 1981, and I've gone through those, and the method that Mr. Kehoe has invoked, the net present value method, is a good method. And we've made use of this method to purchase, well, the town of Gatineau has made use of this method to purchase a hydraulic shovel. Now, let me be clear on this issue. Now, in the past 3 months, I've had occasion to work at the town of Gatineau, at the city of Gatineau, should I say, and I had to defend my reports, and I was called upon to defend all of the figures I came up with to the director. And I don't know if you've questioned any of the figures before you, Mr. Carrier, but let me tell you one thing. The figures that were used in the document, that are reflected in the document, with regard to the rental of a grader with an operator, represents approximately 6 hours worth of grader rental time. And if you go further down the document, we're comparing 300 hours worth of employee time to operate a grader unit. Now, if I take this employee and I raise it up to a 6-hour level to compare bananas to bananas and apples to apples, when we're talking here about $90,000 worth of contracts, I had to refer back to November meetings, to meetings we had back in November, to determine what are the rental prices we were dealing with then. And since then, we've come up with a lower price. Now, this being said, what you forwarded to us, what you forwarded to everyone the other night, is replete with numbers that don't really reflect the truth of the matter. Mr. Carrier, you should quiz your employees as to the integrity of the figures they supplied to you. And Mr. Kehoe, you should take a closer look at your report. We're taking a look here at this particular grader. We don't know what we're going to be doing with it in 12 years from now. There's $50,000 worth of income that will be generating out of the use of that, but what's going to happen after this is over and done with has not yet been determined. Also, we have to take up the human component in all of this, the human side of things. There are some people that do own graders that live within the township of Clarence and Rockland, and they pay taxes, and they offer and they offer us good service, great service. And here we are coming up with a report. We're faced with a report that don't reflect the numbers that those particular people charged back to us. So I'm asking that you might come back to us during the course of another committee of the whole, and that you produce a report reflecting the true nature of things, reflecting the true figures involved. In the meantime, let's go back to the drawing board and review our process. Helen and Jean-Yves, when we discussed this issue at the last meeting, we had a whole bunch of questions. I know. And we were told, the table that was presented to us, there were a couple of mistakes that you guys had notified us on after we'd questioned it. We still got the same report. It was not corrected. So if we're going to be voting on something at a regular meeting and amendments were questioned during the course of the other meeting prior to this one, we expect that the report will reflect what the true numbers are. We're still talking about $400,000 to $500,000 here. That's the amount that's in play. And Mr. Simoneau states correctly that we have to be wary when we're talking about modifying those figures, then those figures need to be modified. Well, Mr. Keogh, you might not be in agreement with me. The purchase price is contentious. I know you don't consider that component, the purchase price component, but it has to be considered somewhere in those years that figure in the report. If we compare the rental, we don't have the purchase price put down to compare one and the other. Well, the option of the purchase price is there. The financing is not taken into account because it's not financing per se, it's an investment decision. How you finance it is a separate issue, Mr. Mayor. How you finance it. I see. Well, that's fine. Well, I'm just saying that I agree with you. Well, is everybody in favor that you come back with us with a modified report? Yes, that's fine. So please come back to us with another report, with a revamped report. So we're going to defer, yes, we're going to defer that to the next committee of the whole, meeting. I just want to make sure that I've understood quite properly what we're dealing with. Fine. And the second resolution deals now with the approval of procedure CW-2016-01 to address requests from a community or individual. Yes, be it resolved, Mr. Mayor, that the Town Council approves those procedures contained in Report 2016-01 CW-2016-01 to address requests from a community or individual. Somebody care to second this resolution? Fine. Go ahead. Seconded by Councillor Simoneau. The reason I raised this is that this issue was never debated at the Committee of the Whole level. I don't even recall having discussed this. There are many questions that were raised with regard to that issue. So you'd like to defer that to the next meeting? Seconded by Councillor Simon? Fine. Can I ask a question, Mr. Mayor? I would like that when these items come up for the very first time and do appear on the regular meeting agenda, that those questions that come up for the first time be identified, so that we might be aware that this has never been discussed beforehand and that we're asked to contend with this for the first time. Sometimes, we're wondering, did we talk about this beforehand? Did we come up with some solutions or some ways of tackling this issue before this night? Well, this policy was debated at a committee of the whole, and it was brought to Council's attention by Mr. Darch. It was part of committee requests, a bundle of committee requests that was forwarded to Council by Mr. Darch. It was not, however, tackled at the next meeting after that one, because I was taking a look at how we could go about following policies to be implemented along with the request received. I know that Mr. Carrier brought some changes to the way in which we were to implement this resolution, and I'm fine. So are we going to defer it to the next committee of the whole meeting? Fine. Once again, that this matter be deferred and be brought back to the next committee of the whole. Is everyone in agreement? That's fine. Fine. All right, folks. Thank you. Thank you for your cooperation. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Simard. That's fine. Seconded by Councillor Simoneau. All those in favor? Or seconded by Councillor Lalonde, should I say. I'm sorry. Fine, that it be deferred to the next meeting. All right then. Let's go on now to item number 11, Committee and Staff Reports. 11.1, Tax Reduction under Section 357 and 358 of the Municipal Act. I can read it. Yes, that's fine. Fine. Clarence and Rockland Town Hall approve the tax reduction in the amount of $9,196.47, being tax reduction that is implemented under Section 357 and 358 of the Municipal Act with regard to all subject lands recommended in the report FIN 2006-10. Seconded by Councillor Simard. Questions? Well, the last line, with regard to the graph that's before us, the school board became exempt. We're talking about an amount of $547,000. What property are we dealing with, Mr. Keogh? Well, the question was asked also by other councillors, why the address was not there. This is a format that we're making use that is prescribed by the province. We can look up the addresses if you wish, but again, I don't know if it contravenes the Privacy Act or what. So we put down a roll number instead, because these are administrative matters, but they do require council approval. Well, I'd just like to follow up on this initial question. Would it be possible? Well, you see, this is the property that the Catholic English School Board is involved in, and can it acquire this property that is located beside the CIA, the EOM building? I'm sorry? There. Well, I can make council members aware tomorrow as to their intentions. We're not talking about a huge property here. It's $547,000. Well, Mr. Keogh, I'm the one that sent you the email. But I understand there could be some issues with privacy, but when we're looking at this thing and we're called upon to vote on something, all I have is a tax roll number, and I'm seeing that the reasons invoked are demolishing or purchased by the city. I just like to determine what we're voting on. So the entire report is useless to me because there are no clues as to what we're voting on. I understand there are privacy issues involved, but I'd like to know exactly what I'm voting on next time around. Well, fine. Thank you very much then. All right. Well, Mr. Mayor, the reasons are set out on the column on the right. If they're not sufficient, we can expound on that. Whether or not we may use the address with regard to the property, well, we'll look into that and we'll make further report. We'll report further to council. Everyone in favor then? Fine. So we'll obtain another answer as to that. Yes. So I trust that it will be written off. I'd just like to know exactly what we're voting on, though. Well, that's fine. That's fine. Let's go on now to bylaws. Are we dealing with those by item? Yes, by consent. I'm sorry. Are there any bylaws that you'd like to set aside for further discussion? We'll also add another bylaw, 12.11, at the tail end of the list of bylaws that we have before us. You see, I do have questions with regard to individual items. Well, for example, the bylaw with regards to appointing the fire chief and the deputy fire chief. Can you explain that before we actually read the whole thing out, or? Well, I can give you a quick explanation. You see, the bylaws that you have here that ask you to appoint certain individuals are subject to, rubber stamping or confirmation. Well, now, with regards to fire chief, see, the bylaw that we'd enacted stated that the fire chief was part-time. We should not have make use of part-time or full-time designation. When we're nominating a fire chief, we're just nominating a fire chief. We should not fine-tune that designation to say it's either part-time or full-time. Well, fine then. I'd like to remove my request to remove 12.8. Fine, Mr. Mayor. I'd also like to set aside 12.9 and 12.10 for further discussion. Councillor Simard, would you care to read at least the 7 first? It will be it resolved that the following bylaws be adopted. 12.1, 2016-34, to appoint the directors of this corporation of the city of Clarence and Rockland. 12.2, to authorize the signature of an agreement with Landrock Excavation Limited for the Morris Street Sanitary Replacement Project. 12.3, 2016-66, to amend bylaw 2016-51, being a bylaw to adopt the 2016 tax rates. 12.4, 2016-77, to appoint the fire chief. 12.5, 2016-78, to appoint the deputy fire chief. 12.6, 2016-79, to appoint municipal law enforcement officers. 12.7, 2016-80, to repeat old appointments MLEO, and 12.11 that deals now with encroachment rights. Well, I know that, yes, point 11 stays in there. I don't have 12.11 on mine. This is one that is that comes out of our discussions. That stems from our discussions uh, that we had at the last committee of the whole. So we're only dealing with the first 7 bylaws that we've read out, seconded by Councillor Lalonde. All those in favor? Thank you then. That's fine. Councillor Lalonde, would you care to read item 12.8? 12.8. You see? Yes, yes. 2016-81, to appoint the chief building official, building inspectors, and property standards officers. I don't have actually a resolution as to that. So can I go with my cursory reading of this? Well, fine. Seconded by Councillor Lalonde. That's fine then. That's fine. Whereas, pursuant to section 3, no, we don't need to read it all? No, that's fine. Any questions as to this? Yes? Mr. Mayor, I do have a question. Will you need someone to second this particular resolution or bylaw? The implementation of the bylaw, seconded by Councillor Lalonde. Fine. Now that I've mixed you up properly, can you still go ahead? Yes, yes, I can. Well, I have no problems with those people that have been appointed, but we're dealing with a new title that has been created in the town's hierarchy. I don't know if there are any financial impacts that go hand in hand with the creation of this new title. If there are no financial impacts or impact with regard to the new positions we've created. So that was one thing. The second thing, Mr. Mayor, and maybe we haven't seen something like this before, but I'd be surprised if we haven't, that the following bylaws be or are hereby repealed, and then there are a whole bunch of bylaws that are repealed. Now, before I approve something, I'd like to know what those bylaws are, what the title of them are, if they're replacing something. I certainly don't want to be voting for something to, to abolish or repeal a bylaw when I don't even know what that bylaw is. There's this 2003-87 doesn't mean anything to me. I don't know what other people's thinking about this is. Well, I agree with that. It's nice to know exactly what we're repealing or modifying. And I believe also that we've appointed an interim treasurer, I believe. Oh, I'm sorry. There was another, we're not dealing with, we're dealing with another bunch of bylaws that we were called upon to repeal. I'm not dealing with this one particularly. I'm not condescending, Mr. Mayor, but I think it's common sense that if something is coming up to us, to ask us to repeal the bylaw, that we know what it was before we repeal it, or what it is. Mr. Ouellet, well, what I can do is that I can scan all bylaws and send them to you. I don't want the whole lot. I just want to know what the title is, and if it's being replaced by something else, why it is being repealed. All of the bylaws that are set out, listed there, are old bylaws that appointed previous bylaw enforcement officers, and those bylaws are not implemented, are not enforced anymore as time has gone by. It's just a cleanup, housekeeping, if you wish. So I have no problem in coming up for you with titles of all bylaws that come into play. That's right. Now, you see, it's attached to something else. So do we reject the whole thing? Do we push the whole thing back? Do we vote on half of those? Well, actually, we're dealing tonight with the first 7 bylaws, and we can defer the remaining bylaws for further deliberation at the next meeting. Well, that's what I'm saying. We can revisit those at the next meeting with the name of all relevant titles. But it's come to a point that the chief building officials and the property standards official needs to be clarified. I don't, it's like we put two different things on one. Well, it won't make much of a difference if we defer that to the next 2 weeks. That's no problem, Mr. Mayor. We can deal with those items at the next meeting. Well, fine then. So we'll bring we'll revisit this at the next meeting along with the proper titles. The same goes with the next bylaw. Section 3, in addition to the role of the building inspector as described in section 1.1 bracket 7 of the Building Code Act. The appointed building inspector, Mr. Mayor, be and are hereby appointed as property standards officers. I was quite surprised to see this, to read this. The bylaw enforcement officers are not responsible for this type of thing. Rather, it should be the building inspector. Is this something new? In previous years, bylaw enforcement officers were responsible for this, and now we're being told that the building inspector is responsible to implement the property standards bylaw. Well, Mr. Mayor, this stems from the building code. Now, the chief building inspector has the requisite knowledge to perform that type of inspection, the structural overview of buildings and problems with regard to clean up lawns. As far as cleaning up lawns go, bylaw enforcement officers come into play. But when we're dealing with structures, Mr. Mayor, we need a chief building inspector to deal with those. Well, as far as lawns that are poorly maintained, there's one on Charon Street that is very poorly maintained. Who's going to attend that site? The bylaw enforcement officer? Yes, the bylaw enforcement officer shall attend that venue. That falls under the clean yard bylaw that we've implemented, or that has been implemented, or property standards if you wish. And that relates, but if there's anything that relates to the building per se and not the lawn, if you wish, or the grass, then the chief building inspector comes into play. Well, let me tell you, this particular lawn that I'm referring to, you see, the outside appearance does not fall under the application of, or under the aegis of the chief building inspector's gamut of responsibilities, if you wish. It's what I said, Mr. Simard. Now you're coming back with the same thing. I thought you were moving on to something else, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry. I'm going too quickly. Mrs. Simard, I think we're moving too fast for you tonight. All right, 2016-83, being a bylaw to dedicate a public highway, a portion of land within the city of Clarence and Rockland, whereas Municipal Act Section 81 bracket 4 as amended provides that every municipal corporation may pass bylaws for establishing and delineating a highway. Now, the reason I bring that to your attention, Mr. Mayor, with regards to dedicating a portion of Patricia Street, is that I researched this issue and I took a look at documents, and I was surprised to conclude that it had not yet been registered. The depth measures 37.7 meters, and the width is, I forget the width measurements right now, but there was a bylaw that was enacted in 2015 as to that. Mr. Carrier, do you have an explanation? I don't have any. We're catching up to those items that have not yet been identified with regards to. So you'll come back to council at the next regular meeting of town council with further explanations as to what's involved with regards to dedicating public a portion of Patricia Street. Well, that's fine. Let's go on now to 2016-84. Mr. Mayor, do you wish to defer this particular item to the next meeting. I have someone to move, but not to second. Seconded by Councillor Zant that this be deferred also to the next meeting. Let's go on now to bylaw 2016-84 to appoint an acting treasurer. Mr. Zant, I have no problem with Mr. Keogh acting as acting treasurer. He's an excellent treasurer. He's already fulfilling uh, the duties of a treasurer. But my question targets a specific issue, Mrs. Collier. Mr. Keogh already has many titles, you see. Yes, Economic Development Officer, now Town Treasurer, and I'm sure a couple of other ones. Are there any financial impact, or is there a financial impact with regard to this added role, or is he going to assume all three roles at the same salary? Well, I wouldn't be asking the question if it had been written out in the report. I'm just wondering because there's nothing mentioned to that effect. Well, there's no notice. Hey, you're getting me close to for free here. I'm sorry. I just wanted to clear things up. But thank you, Mr. Keogh, for your good service. Go ahead, Mr. Drouin. Mr. Keogh, um, if I was going to ask you today, how much time have you spent in the last year um, in your capacity as economic development officer, or whatever you want to call, you want to uh, identify this title. I know you'll answer me honestly. If it's 12 hours, you're going to tell me 12 hours. If it's 3 weeks, you're going to tell me 3 weeks. But a ballpark figure, and I'm not going to hold you against the wall. I'm going to, slamming you against the wall because we're adding more and more to your existing duties. And we're complaining about the fact that we need an economic development officer and we need this and we need that. And then we just switch things around and we hand you more work. There's something that doesn't jive in my mind tonight. So can I have your answer? Can I have your reaction? Well, Mr. Mayor, let me tell you, you're aware at council that we're working on an industrial park strategy, and at the last council meeting, we're introducing also a report with steering committee there. I do sit at the steering committee at the county, Mr. Mayor, and we're meeting probably twice a year, but now it's going to be every month because of this study that has started. Now, the industrial park strategy that I've been working on along with Mr. Carrière, who is part of the team, and we've been working quite in depth over the last few weeks, and we expect that a report will be sent to council, hopefully, before the fall. Before the fall. So, yes, and of course, I'm on the committee with the Chamber of Commerce. We're looking at how we can work better together to better understand the business expansion phenomena that we're involved in and an opportunity for the city. We're giving them more information, and as new businesses are established, that the chamber has that information forwarded to them. So you're working as an economic development officer, yes, in that capacity, in light of what you've told us, yes. So he's also working alongside all other municipalities within the counties. Mrs. Collier, I'd just like to add at this point in time during the year that the audit has been mapped out. I believe that if we were in the heat of the audit at this point in time, it would be extremely difficult for Mr. Kehoe to assume the role of treasurer if we were in the heat of the audit. But during the period in which we would be replacing the treasurer, usually it's vacation time. But look, we can give you an update on the economic development situation that Mr. Kehoe has been involved in, if you wish. Thank you. Seconded by Mrs. Simard to implement and approve 2016-84. Let's go on now to item 12.11. Councillor Zant. Fine then. Be it resolved that Town Council adopt bylaw 2016-76, authorizing the mayor and the clerk to enter into an encroachment agreement with 1770736 Ontario Inc. Geez, I need my glasses to make use of part of the sidewalk within the right of way on Laurier Street. I believe that Mr. Simoneau yourself had occasion to go and take a look at this. Yes, if you'll allow me to clarify this further, because of Mr. Simoneau, who came up with a solution that was better than what the owner had proposed to us. You know, the owner proposed that he build a deck, a type of deck measuring 4 feet wide. Now, Mr. Simoneau came up with the following solution. You know, not to create encroachment onto the sidewalk, but allowing the owner to put up a tiny fence that would leave pedestrians about a few feet to walk onto the sidewalk without preventing, without impeding the free flow of pedestrian traffic. The owner was quite happy with this solution that was come up by Councillor Simoneau, and I'd like that Council approve this. Well, I measured the this afternoon. There's only 47 inches wide allowed for the pedestrian. No, this has been modified. Well, look, from the entrance ramp, the ramp measures 50 inches wide. Now, the sidewalk in between the entrance ramp, well, it measures, we see that distance measures 45 inches, but you're not counting the width of the bricks there. Yeah, well, people will have to tabulate the width of the bricks now. What we're asking, look, we're asking the owner to set up his fence on the side of the street so that people that walk or that travel by there will travel in between his tables and the building. So the tables would be installed interlock style, a foot from the edge of the roadway. Well, you won't have uh, much, you won't have sufficient space left over. And well, look, people walk 3 or 4 wide on sidewalks. You can only accommodate 1 to 2 people wide along that area that they're walking about. Mr. Leon, if you've ever walked along the Ottawa market, it's full. It's replete with situations like that. But Laurier is a collector. It's not the same as a collector street. Well, at that area of Laurier Street, we're talking here about a 2-lane uh, roadway. Take a look. We even measured. We took measurements. Mrs. Collier. Well, Mr. Carrier. Well, those people that take a look at what's going on there, look. If you come up with a 12-inch table, you don't have sufficient space on either side. You're coming up with a 12-inch wide table with chairs. But I know what you're picturing. This is what we initially pictured, but our opinion of this changed completely when we went down to measure the actual, space left over. If we proceed that way, there's 1.8 meters left over, more than enough to even accommodate our good folks that are wheelchair bound, as well as others that go by that part of the sidewalk. Well, that doesn't make sense at all, in my view. Well, what can I say? It's nice to have a terrace, so like a restaurant terrace affair. But look, when I measured this out, uh, it, it didn't make sense. Mr. Mayor, you see, the yellow part of the schematic here is the encroachment that is to be taken up by the tables that will be set down, and the red portion delineates that portion made up of interlock bricks, interlocking bricks. This is Laurier, and the ramp is there, and here are the 1905 buildings situated up at top. So we're leaving sufficient space for pedestrian to walk by. Well, the town sidewalk doesn't run right up to the line up on top, though, does it? No, no. It is built along that way. This is the ramp here, going from top to bottom, right? From now, south. If you take a look at the space available between the ramp, 45 inches, and the existing structures, what's the sidewalk width that you're taking into account down at the bottom? 1.8? No, from the brown area to the green area. Well, I don't know what that distance. Well, it doesn't make sense. We measured out 1.8 meters. That's taking into account his sidewalk, not the ramp, but his sidewalk. There's a 45-inch protrusion that comes out of the sidewalk to his setup. Take a look at the rock wall that is built in front of the Hawkesbury General Hospital offices. Now there's a step there. There's a step that leads onto the sidewalk. It doesn't offer more than 18 inches wide for people to walk on, even if we were to reduce the encroachment by maybe a foot. The owner of this establishment would still be happy with this. If the 1.8 meters, as Mr. Lalonde states, starts off from the retention wall, that individual would have no problem with this. The city of Ottawa has patios set up on the sidewalk. But what do you mean by patios? There's a there's no space available. There's no available space. There is much more. There is certainly available space. If if we encounter other pedestrians heading the other way, we just step to the side and allow other pedestrians to walk by. Now, there will be a small fence. There will be a small fence erected along that area. Well, Mr. Mayor, that's not exactly what we're dealing with. Mr. Simoneau is aware of the fact that, we considered the 6 to 7 inches worth of free space from the curb up to that point that is afforded to pedestrians walking by there, because we also took into account heavy traffic, heavy trucks with side mirrors that might drive by also, that might encroach, if I may use this term, onto the allowable space for the pedestrians to go by. So if you see, we're dealing with a 1.883 meter width. So you say that you'll be setting up tables? Well, not maybe. So the merchant says that he'll be putting up 30-inch tables with chairs on either side. I think it's going to be a rather tight squeeze. The onus is going to be upon him to accommodate our wishes. Well, if you sit on the... Look, let's measure this out now. Let's measure this out. Are there people parked in that area? Well, there are no parking facilities in that area. If he wants to put up 4 tables, leaving sufficient space for pedestrians to go by, well, the onus is upon him to do this. He can require he has to require a permit from the city of Clarence and Rockland to allow him to do this. Well, we can try this out. And by the way, Mr. Mayor, his permit is renewable each and every year. Well, in any event, of course, he won't be doing business in this particular fashion during the winter time. Look, you can't eat a submarine sandwich when it's minus 21 Celsius outside during the winter time. So he's asking to operate this way from May the 1st to the last week of October. Well, then, all those in favor? We're going to grant him a 1-year operating permit. Yes. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm opposed. Fine. Councillor Lalonde is opposed. Well, seconded by Councillor Simoneau then, by the way. Well, fine. So we won't close the regular meeting of Town Council because we'll be attending a closed meeting after this particular meeting. So be it resolved that the regular meeting be adjourned to allow us to attend the committee of the whole meeting. Seconded by Councillor Zant. All those in favor? Fine. Let's take a 5 to 10 minute break. We'll meet again at the next meeting. Thank you.